Hi folks, I'm Tim from alphashooters.com, and in this video I'll be doing a short autofocus comparison between the Sony 70-200 f4 G II macro lens and the Sony 70-200 f2.8 GM II lens. For a more detailed comparison and lots of sample images, please check out the links to my articles below this video, along with the Sony forum that I run. So first we're going to see how quickly each lens acquires focus in my garden. Then I'll take them up to my local motocross track to see how they perform in the real world. Just quickly before we get into the video, in case you are unaware, both of these lenses feature 4 of Sony's XD linear focus motors. So you would expect the autofocus performance to be very similar between the lenses. So first we're focusing from a minimum focusing distance out to infinity. Then from a few meters ahead of the camera to around about 100 meters in front, and finally to a couple of subjects very close to one another. And now the same again, but with a 1.4 times teleconverter added. And finally with the 2 times teleconverter. And here the background is so out of focus, there's really very few lines or contrast for the camera and the lens to lock onto. And now the same again, but with the GM II. And with the 1.4 times teleconverter. And with the 2 times teleconverter. And next we'll move on to the motocross track. Now let's compare some of those images side by side. So first of all, 200mm, no teleconverters. You can see from these two images that the GM definitely comes out on top. It is a little bit sharper. Again, in this second image, the GM lens is definitely the sharper lens, although to be fair, the light was a little bit better in that shot for the GM. Now these two shots, very similar. The GM is just a little bit sharper. Here, very difficult to tell, but the GM to my eyes is just that little bit sharper than the F4. Now with the 1.4 teleconverter, you can see in the writing on the shirt and the helmet that the GM lens is sharper than the F4 lens here. Again, the GM lens just a little bit sharper. And in this image as well, the GM lens is definitely coming out on top. And this one, it's close, but I think the GM still is the slightly sharper of the two images. Now with the 2x teleconverter, unfortunately I couldn't shoot at 400 because I was too close, but you can see here definitely the GM is on top. And again in this next image, the GM lens is the sharper of the two. This image, it's harder to tell, but I think the GM does slightly take the win there. And these last two, it's a little unfair because the guy on the right was a bit closer, but it is clearly the sharper image. So just to wrap it up quickly, I can see very little difference in the autofocus performance between these two lenses, at least in the light conditions that I was shooting in. In lower light conditions, yes, the 2.8 is a little snappier, as you would expect. Regarding keepers, with my A1, neither lens missed focus, and I've been very happy with the quality of images from each lens. Yes, the 2.8 is definitely a little bit sharper, but unless you are pixel peeping, you probably won't notice the difference. I've sold images to riders taken with both lenses, and they really couldn't care less which lens or camera the photos were taken with. So I hope you found that video helpful. Now which lens you buy, if any at all, is up to you, but I don't think you will be disappointed with either lens. If you do end up buying one, please do let us know the reasons behind your decision down in the comments below. And like I said at the start of this video, for a more detailed comparison and lots of sample images, please do check out the links to my articles below this video, along with the Sony forum that I run. Until next time, happy shooting.